If you had $1 trillion, you would have to spend $1 million a day for over 2,700 years to use up all your money. So, could one person really spend $1 trillion in their lifetime? Well, even if you wanted to live a selfish life of decadent luxury, the answer is still probably not. But if you wanted to make a positive impact on the world, then your $1 trillion could easily be spent on tackling some of society's most pressing issues. In this video, we will break down the ways that someone could realistically spend $1 trillion, which will include a balance of both fun purchases as well as investments for the global good. We will also showcase just how absurd $1 trillion is to a normal person, and all of the unthinkable things it could buy for both an individual and for society. So, let's see what one person with $1 trillion can spend to make their life, and the life of others, a bit better. Let's start by understanding exactly how much $1 trillion is. If you lived for 80 years and started spending the moment you were born, you would need to spend $12.5 billion every single year. That comes out to $34 million for every day of your life. This number is so big that there is not a single person that currently possesses this amount of wealth solely in their name. However, there is one family that is worth over $1 trillion, and that is the Saudi royal family, which is estimated to be presently worth $1.4 trillion. Still, it is conceivable that a single person could be worth $1 trillion in the future. The title for the richest person in the world often fluctuates based on how business is going, but it includes names like the LVMH CEO Bernard Arnault, Tesla head Elon Musk, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Their net worths are usually in the neighborhood of $100 to $200 billion and are tied largely to the price of their company's stock. But if their businesses continue to grow, it is entirely possible that they could catapult to trillionaire status. In fact, numerous models predict that we will see the first trillionaire in the next 5 to 10 years. But let's say that this person exists today and that their goal is to spend all of their wealth. That means they aren't looking to make any investments to make their money grow further. After all, $1 trillion is probably enough anyway. Still, they want to treat themselves to unique experiences that only someone with their level of wealth could enjoy. But they would also like to help out their friends and family, while also making the world a better place. So, how could this person spend $1 trillion in their lifetime? Let's find out. We begin with splurges on the individual level. First, our trillionaire needs somewhere to live. Any old millionaire or billionaire can buy a mansion or penthouse apartment, but our trillionaire has their sights set on something a bit more private and extravagant. Therefore, they set out to buy a massive private island. The most expensive island ever purchased was the Hawaiian island of Lanai, which was bought by Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle, for $300 million in 2012. Today, that island is valued at over $600 million. Therefore, let's budget $1 billion for a large private island somewhere in the Caribbean. Let's add another $1 billion to build an estate and to connect it with utilities and develop it with amenities, which of course include a marina to dock a superyacht, an airplane runway, and an F1 caliber racetrack. Okay, so how would they get to their island? It would be too easy to just buy a private jet. No, our trillionaire needs something more grand. Why buy a small plane when you can buy a whole jumbo jet? In 2007, the Prince of Saudi Arabia commissioned Airbus to build a custom version of their A380, the world's largest passenger airliner. For a reported $500 million, he wanted to make it into a flying palace with 20 VIP suites instead of the normal 800-seat layout. These days, the price might be a little higher, especially if you want to include opulent options like a sauna or a full-size kitchen. So, let's budget another $1 billion just to be safe. Next, our trillionaire needs some cars. A normal rich person might buy a few sports cars, but our trillionaire can take it to the next level. If they like a particular brand, they could very well buy every single car ever made by that brand. For example, McLaren has produced roughly 20,000 cars in their lifetime. With an average cost of $300,000 each, our trillionaire could literally buy every single McLaren for $6 billion in total. But what's the use of all of these extravagances if you can't share the experiences? So, why not host a party? Or, why not make it a series of parties like The Great Gatsby? If we budget another $1 billion for partying, they can host a big event every month for 80 years and could spend $10 million per party. For each event, they could invite a famous artist or band to perform a few songs and cater it with the finest gourmet foods shipped in from anywhere in the world. What about some time for themselves? A normal vacation is just too plain. How about a trip to space? In 2022, NASA partnered with Axiom and SpaceX to offer space tourists a week-long trip to the International Space Station for a reported $55 million each. Of course, you should probably bring your spouse or a friend, so let's budget $110 million for this trip. But not many folks can say they've been to space, so that money is probably well spent to appease the psychology of our trillionaire. When they're back on land, our trillionaire realizes that they want to pursue some hobbies. The art scene seems quite fitting, so they start to amass a collection of paintings and sculptures. However, due to their sheer wealth, almost no piece of art is off limits. So they continue to curate their collection until it rivals even the most prestigious museums in the world. They could then establish their own museum in their name, or instead buy an existing museum. For example, the combined works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art are reported to be valued at $100 billion. So let's put them down for one of those. Another hobby that our trillionaire can get into is sports. But instead of playing, they can become an owner. Billionaires usually have enough wealth to buy one or maybe even two teams. But our trillionaire could actually buy the whole league. If you add up the value of all 32 teams in the National Football League, it comes out to about $150 billion. If the NFL isn't for sale, then our billionaire could just start their own league altogether. By now, our trillionaire has spent over $260 billion on an already lavish and fulfilling lifestyle. But that means they still have another $740 billion that is just sitting there. So, what else can they spend their money on? Well, if they are generous enough, it could be on family and friends. They have enough money to buy $1 million house for 100 people in their inner circle and also give each one of them another $10 million in cash, just as a nice little gift. That would add up to $1.1 billion, which sounds like a lot, but would represent just 0.1% of their entire net worth. Since our trillionaire is feeling a bit more generous, they decide to take their friends out on a cruise. Instead of chartering their own small yacht for a week or two, our rich benefactor decides to rent a whole commercial cruise liner for a whole year. 1 week on a normal cruise line would likely set you back about $2,000 per person. So, for a whole year, that would come out to about $100,000. Since a cruise ship can fit up to 5,000 passengers, our trillionaire could fill up the ship at a cost of $500 million for the year. Let's double that figure to account for the cost of staff and for renting the actual ship, to make it now a $1 billion vacation. If that's not enough, our trillionaire could also rent out a whole country. back in 2011, Airbnb partnered with Liechtenstein, a small country in Europe located between Switzerland and Austria, to rent out the entire country's accommodations for $70,000 a night. There might be some inflation since then, so let's say it now costs about double that amount. Therefore, for $50 million, they could rent out the country for an entire year and invite their friends to stay as well. Even after that spending spree, our trillionaire still has $737 billion left. Now is their time to help the world and create a lasting legacy. One of the biggest issues facing our society today is world hunger. The United Nations estimates that it would cost $40 billion a year through 2030 to end world hunger. So, for roughly $280 billion, our trillionaire could donate their cash and end short-term food shortages worldwide. Another big issue is access to education. While one could build schools and pay for teachers, our trillionaire wants to make the biggest impact possible and do it in a modern way. So they turn to a system that can digitally provide limitless education: the internet. The easiest way to connect all the remote parts of the world to the internet is not by laying millions of miles of cables, but rather to do it through a satellite network. The cost to build and launch a satellite is around $325 million, while you probably need about 40 satellites to create a robust network. So that comes to $13 billion in costs. You then need to install some routing equipment in each home, which should cost about $100 per household. If we assume that about 1/3 of the world's 8 billion people do not have access to the internet, then we would need to install about 2.5 billion routers. The total cost of the project would then be $250 billion for routers and another $13 billion in satellite costs, bringing the total to $263 billion. By spending roughly 1/4 of their net worth, our trillionaire could bring education to all and connect the whole world. But what if our trillionaire realizes that life on Earth is just not sustainable and wants to venture into space? Well, they could use the remainder of their money to help colonize Mars. Elon Musk estimated that a self-sustaining city on Mars would likely need about 1 million tons of building materials to get started. He also predicted that the cost to launch rockets with that cargo would likely be about $100,000 per ton. Therefore, the lowest cost to build a permanent settlement on Mars is likely $100 billion. Let's add another $50 billion for the development of rockets, and say that our trillionaire would need to pony up $150 billion to get this idea off the ground. That would be a small price to pay for all the lessons that we can learn about life on another planet, and could even be what saves humanity if Earth ever became uninhabitable. After splurging on themselves, helping out friends and family, and making a significant impact on society, our trillionaire still has almost $45 billion left. If they live for 80 years and never earned any interest off their nest egg, they could still spend $559 million per year. Here, we've outlined the way that one person can enjoy their life, but also impact the lives of literally billions of people with just $1 trillion. So the real question is, why don't we solve some of these global problems now then? After all, the world's total net worth is roughly $500 trillion. Why are we unable to end world hunger, provide access to healthcare and education, and develop a forward-looking space program, all while enjoying life? Well, let's just say that most individuals and governments have proven to not be as charitable and efficient as our example trillionaire. Perhaps it is a reflection of the capitalistic society that we have built as well, where the winners take all and the rest of us are left on the sidelines. But maybe you can change that if you become the next trillionaire. What do you think? Could you find ways to spend $1 trillion? Let us know in the comments below, and please like this video and subscribe to our channel to learn more. As always, thanks for watching.